Hi, everybody. My name is Adrian Parker, and welcome to my first little video here on this channel. Like I mentioned in my bio, I wanted to use this channel as kind of a platform to just dive a little bit into topics or just random things that I don't get to explore on my normal day-to-day basis. I'm a strength and conditioning specialist through the NSCA, or National Strength and Conditioning Association. I work as a performance coach with Exos, and I wanted this first video to be kind of about the use of AI in the strength and conditioning sports performance world. I think that this topic is more prevalent than ever with just the constant evolution of AI tools and how everyone has at least had some kind of experience or has access to these tools, whether it's Google Gemini, ChatGPT, Otter AI, Grammarly. I feel like it's a really good topic to kind of just dive into a little bit and explore. And if there's anything that you have anything to kind of add to the conversation, please let me know. But first, I just wanted to preface everything with uh, like risks, but also the benefits of using AI. Take it from me, I'm a current college student. I'm pursuing my master's in sports performance, and the use I use ChatGPT every once in a while, and it's such a good tool to either brainstorm. It's great at compiling a lot of information and giving it to you in a more digestible format. And it's really good to kind of like jog your brain. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten like a topic or a prompt, and they give it to you and it's just so broad that I'm like, I don't even know where to start. So using these tools have been a game changer where they can give you kind of like an idea where to go, and then you take it and run with it. And I think that's fantastic. Um, but having said that, the number one risk associated with AI is data privacy. These are tools that constantly learn and evolve based on what you give it. So, me being a strength and conditioning specialist, if I were to ever, I haven't, prefacing it, I haven't, but if I were to give the tool any kind of um, sensitive information about a client, there's no telling really where this data goes. Obviously, I'm not a coder for ChatGPT or Gemini or anything like that. And we wouldn't want that information falling into the wrong hands. So obviously, if you're going to use ChatGPT or anything like that, just be cognizant of what you give it. I'm not saying that you can't like paste an email into it, but if it has sensitive information, you know, just anything that you wouldn't want someone that you don't know knowing about, I would just be very cautious with inputting that into any sort of artificial intelligence tool. Um, and then also along that same line of it constantly learning and evolving, AI is a tool that needs to have information in order to be programmed. So depending on what information was input into the tool in order to begin programming, it's may reflect some biases that whoever programmed it has. So in this case, unless this this tool is programmed by the greatest strength and conditioning coach of all time, which is not something that exists, they're gonna have some shortcomings, some pitfalls. Granted, no one coach knows everything, but if it's if this tool is created and programmed by someone who has no knowledge in strength and conditioning, it's only going to be learning from whatever it can find. based on the tools that it was given to be programmed. They may be unable to provide specific answers or programs based on what you give it. So the more specific you can get, the better the outcome will be, undoubtedly. But going back to just the data privacy thing, you don't want to really give it too much. There's also like the small thing of environmental factors. Basically, every time that you input like 100-word email is what I read, um, it uses the equivalent of a bottle of water as like a cooling, um, a median of cooling, basically, just because water has such a high specific heat. But I'm not really a big chemistry nerd, um, not super into chemistry, but just another something to consider if you are especially environmentally conscious, that AI does have some tricky things, just because these processing units are so big and powerful. Um, so as a transition here, I wanted to kind of dive a little bit deeper into these tools. Um, so for the purpose of this, I did ask ChatGPT, pretending to be a complete novice, with very little experience, a beginner. I asked ChatGPT to kind of give me a couple general workout tips, and I'm gonna go through these and just share my thoughts on the information that it gave, what I agree with and what I kind of differ on, just so you can see the contrast between what was taught to me and what maybe even some research says versus the uh, the information that this chat tool gives out. All right, so with this chat GPT tool right here, I just asked it, can you give me some general important workout tips when creating a program? It says absolutely. When designing a workout program, here are some core principles. So the first one is start with clear goals. Before touching sets or exercises, define the purpose of the program. Do you want to build strength, hypertrophy, power, endurance, or a mix? What's the time frame? And then the training frequency that you can realistically commit to. So this is very similar to things that were taught in school, like fit goals, frequency, intensity, time, and type. Don't really have a problem with anything here. I agree. Only thing is when you're when you're giving any kind of workout advice to someone who's a beginner, um, they may not know what hypertrophy is. Um, so I mean, it's just me being nitpicky, not a big deal, but just something to keep in mind. The second one is prioritizing fundamental movement patterns. Um, each well-rounded program should consistently train these core patterns. So they have a squat, a hinge, a push, a pull, a lunge, slash unilateral, meaning like one leg, one arm at a time, and then a carry slash core. Um, this isn't bad information. Um, with what I've learned, we have like a movement tree, and maybe this is something I'll cover in a different video. But this as a movement tree is a little bit abstract. Ideally, so there's the squat pattern, lower body push is totally fine. Um, but realistically, each of these movement patterns should include a unilateral component. So again, the way that we were taught was there was a lower body push, a lower body pull, and both of them had unilateral, meaning we want to train unilateral as a part of our program for each of these movement patterns. And then for hinge, there is knee dominant hinges and hip dominant hinges. So an RDL deadlift. Deadlift being in a hinge, technically right, but as a part of our like the movement tree that we were learning, deadlift is both a push and a pull. So, just another little nitpicky thing. And then hip thrust is a another hip dominant pull, but there's also like leg curls that you can do on a machine or with sliders or on a plyo ball. But those are also important movement patterns to implement anytime you have a training program. Um, Covering these insurance, yeah, that's accurate for the tips. Also, another thing that um, in order to just create the most holistic program that you can, it mentions anti-rotation work, which is 100% something I agree with, but I think it should also include rotational work. Our bodies are made to rotate, and if you're including anti-rotation work, it's also important to create rotation work. What if you're trying to, scoop a little kid up, your son, your daughter, your niece, your nephew, um, from your side and then bring him in front of you? That's something that involves a little bit of rotation, some oblique activation. So adding that into there is also important. But that's definitely something I'll get a little further into in a future video to come. Next up, balancing volume, intensity, and frequency. Um, so these are the most prevalent variables in effective programming: volume, intensity, and frequency. Um, yeah, I mean, volume, you can kind of cut off this and just do total reps because sets times reps is the same thing and then times weight. But again, just me being a little difficult. Um, Intensity, low relative to your max. Yeah, that's right. And then frequency, how often a movement slash muscle is trained weekly. In terms of these guidelines, I did look at these a little bit beforehand, and 8 to 12 hard sets per muscle group per week for a beginner, in my opinion, is a little much. There's not that much work that needs to be done, especially if you're a beginner, meaning less than a year in the gym. And if this is like one of your first programs, if you're going for 8 to 12 sets, I don't have a problem with this number here, the 8 sets. It's the 12 that kind of catches me. In terms of the 8 to 12 sets, this study shows that you only really need one set to failure, so one very difficult set per week in order to stimulate muscle growth or hypertrophy in this case. Um, Obviously, in terms of exercise, like dose stimulus or dose response, more is going to be better. Um, so obviously, if you do 12 sets instead of 8 sets per week, you're going to see more growth. Um, it shows that every additional set resulted in 0.3% of an increase of effective size of muscle. Um, but if you're a beginner, you're gonna see such a stark contrast, such an immediate improvement in your muscle mass, your lean muscle mass, body composition or body recomposition, pretty much immediately. Um, so the number one thing is for a beginner is don't overwork it. You're not going to need in this what this said 8 to 12 hard sets per muscle group per week. In my opinion, that's a little much. I think 8 should be the absolute limit, but there's nothing wrong with starting at 3 to 4 sets per week. Um, in terms of intermediate, 12 to 20, not bad. I think 20 is still a little hit, a little bit high. Um, but if you're an intermediate, like 1 to 3 years of training, there's nothing wrong with this. And then advanced, y- I've seen people do 30 sets per week. And if your body can do that and fully recover before the next time you have to hit that muscle group or that movement pattern, by all means, like I'm not, I'm not going to stop you because you're obviously on it. Um, but what this says here also, don't max out all three at once. I totally agree. Don't overdo it because if you're sore by the time you have to hit that movement pattern again, you're probably overworking it. Um, and for beginners, it's going to be especially easy to do so. Um, Number four, apply progressive overload. Um, Add weights as a way to stimulate more growth, as a way to progressive overload your sets. Adding weights, adding reps within a rep range, adding sets, slowing tempo slash improving control, and reducing rest time strategically. So yeah, there's a couple things here that I don't necessarily agree with. In terms of adding weight and adding reps, 100% agree. It all goes back to general adaptation syndrome. But what general adaptation syndrome suggests is that there's only really two ways of increasing of achieving progressive overload. It's intensity and volume. So weight and reps. Um, the other ones, it's not, it's a way to make it more challenging, but in terms of what is ideal to achieving that progressive overload, the slowing tempo and reducing rest times is not something that I agree with. Rest times, unless you're planning for specifically endurance-based training, you're not really going to want to reduce your rest times. Reason being, let's take a power clean, right? It's a very highly technical lift that is going to require it's going to induce a lot of metabolic strain. It's something that's going to take your whole body performing super efficiently. Um, and as a result of that, you're going to need about 2 to 5 minutes of rest in between each set that you do, depending on, what percentage of your rep max that you're performing this movement at. Um, but say you're kind of plateauing at three 310 on your power lift or 315. In order to achieve progressive overload, you're not gonna take your usual 5 minute rest time and then do 4 minutes or 2 minutes or 3 minutes. That's gonna set you up for failure because your body's not gonna be able to recover fast enough. The reason why those rest periods are suggested is because that's the amount of time that your body's going to take your body's going to need in order to fully flush your system of that previous set and get your body ready to take on a significant amount of load again. Again, if you're doing muscular endurance, by all means, but in terms of hypertrophy, strength, power, these are done at such a high intensity that reducing the rest time is really going to just set you up for failure when you really need that rest time in order to get the most out of your sets and your reps. Slowing tempo slash improving control is another one that's a little bit of a misnomer. I know that all throughout going to school, everyone talked about time under tension. And while time under tension can be a useful tool, I think it's more of a useful tool in the space of isometrics, putting muscles under tension, at a higher intensity, but like overcoming isometrics specifically. There's another study here. Funny enough, Jeff Nippard is one of the researchers on this one. I thought that was kind of cool. But this study suggests that slowing down or speeding up repetition tempo is not as efficient or useful as once was thought. So if I can just quickly find it here. Mm, mm, mm. Here we go. Found that a wide range of repetition durations, zero point 0.5 to 8 seconds, resulted in similar levels of hypertrophy. Um, Meaning if you're doing a bench press of half a second all the way to 8 seconds, which will probably require you to slow down your concentric as well as your eccentric motion, it's not really going to make that much of a difference. Or at least not enough to make it worth all that extra effort that you're putting into slowing down purposefully your eccentric and concentric actions. So the ideal recommendation for repetition is just 3 to 8 seconds. Anything within there, you're not going to see a difference if you do anything more or less. Um, in fact, it goes on to suggesting that even a slower eccentric action could be detrimental to performance. So that's not something that I personally would want to mess with. Um, but if you just imagine a total beginner, someone who's not used to or not in the gym frequently, reading something like this could totally, it's not gonna like, I don't think it has a high potential for injury. Um, the rest times certainly can, especially if they're doing something technical or a compound movement, vertically loading the spine, anything like that. If their body's not fully recovered in time, it definitely could add, increase risk for injury. This one, I don't think so, but it's just not particularly useful. These are great, but it's not 3 out of 5, and these two are really being the same. So half of the tips that they're giving, not really being ideal, is something that's not good. Plan logical exercise order. Now this one I agree with. Power skill work first. This being a great tip. The most technical or demanding exercises first. What we were taught was just putting all the either Olympic lifts or plyometrics, anything that's very metabolically demanding, or just compound multi-joint exercises like a squat, where you're using like hips and your knees, like multiple joints. Those are going to take the most out of you. So if we want to get the most out of them, we put them first, and then everything else could come after. The main compound lifts, exactly what I said, multi-joint, compound lifts here, accessory hypertrophy work, great. This can also kind of leak into this if your main compound lift is a hypertrophy focus too. That's great. Then accessory work, if you are looping these into your main compound lifts, ideally I would want um before like accessory work, any secondary lifts, these being like unilateral or single joint movements, like your leg curls or Bulgarian split squats, single arm bench press, or anything that you use dumbbells with because both arms are responsible for their own weight. Those are still unilateral lifts. Anything like that, I would probably do after the main compound lifts just to attack any kind of imbalances that you may have. And then after that, being accessory work, isolation and stability work, and then conditioning. Conditioning, being like an operative thing. if you're trying to train for a marathon, I probably do conditioning first. That's just me, just because that is going to be more important to your final goal than all of this stuff. This stuff isn't as important to this as this if you're training for a marathon, a 5K, a 10K, anything like that. Um, Respect, recovery, and individualization. Schedule rest 1 to 2 days per week minimum. Use a deload week every 4 to 8 weeks, and adjust for life stress, sleep, and nutrition. These are pretty good general recommendations. Um, Obviously, the rest days are going to be very specific to you, and also what you feel. If you're still super sore from a workout that you had 2 days ago, take that third extra day. Just because if you try and push through it, you're not going to get the most out of it. And why, not saying don't do anything, like you can definitely go for a walk or a run, do something that's not your regularly scheduled workout just to break it up, and give your body a chance to fully recover. Um, Track, review, and adjust, log exercises, weights, reps, RPE. RPE is kind of tricky to track yourself. Obviously, unless you record yourself, and know yourself pretty well. I don't think that if I'm looking at myself squatting, and I'm like, my face is clenching up, I'm gritting my teeth, I don't really know what that is unless I've had the experience of doing a 1 rep max, and really seeing what like a full exertion is for myself. So while this is a good tip, um, it's not going to be a super viable source of information for you. Um, Review every 4 to 6 weeks. That's good. Adjust one variable at a time. I love that. And then be patient. Meaningful adaptations take weeks, not days. I mean, that's one of the best ones that they've given out, one of the best tips. Just because I've seen so many people saying, "Hey, I have a wedding in 4 weeks and I want to lose 20 pounds. What can I do? I don't care if it's illegal or not." I'm like, well, I'm not going to recommend you anything illegal. Um, so it's really important for anyone who's trying to make their own plan that, you may not see, especially if you're reasonably trained, um, that you're probably not going to see adaptations in a very short amount of time. If you are brand new to working out, it's going to be great. Like you're going to see so many adaptations. You're going to see your body change super quick. But that's not, you're going to reach a point where now your body is used to that stimulus that you're giving it. It goes back to general adaptation syndrome. And now you're going to need either more weight, or more volume in order to get results. But that's going to take weeks. It's not something that happens overnight. So give yourself reasonable expectations. And that's going to just start you off for success. Bonus tips, warm up intentionally, not randomly. Um, yeah, I mean, all in all, there's a little bit of things that I disagree with here and there, but I'm not super upset about it. Having said that, if this was their first introduction into what do I want to do in the gym? I just got a gym membership. What am I doing here? This is not the kind of information that I would want to give somebody. Obviously, people who have experience and uh, some training uh, background, they're going to be able to see exactly where their beliefs differ from AI here. But just something to keep in mind. And then another added little thing here is so unless you're like me, or if you're like me, you didn't even realize that there were more than one language models as a part of ChatGPT, and you can find it over here. You can discover new kind of chats. So this one's called Victor, and it was created by this gentleman named, I think his name's Edwin. It's gonna take too long right now. But look in like a preliminary look up. He's a performance coach himself, and so he's the one that programmed this language model. Very similar to like what I was saying in the beginning of this video. Everyone's gonna have a little bit of bias, and whoever is programming that initial chat, like the regular classic chat GPT version that I was talking to and asking them to give me important workout tips, they're not really in this field, so they might not give me super in-depth tips or points when I'm trying to create my own program. So just as a little comparison, so start with clear goals, define your purpose, your training variables. Um, right off the bat, you can see that they give general recommendations depending on what you're trying to accomplish with your goals. You want strength, you want hypertrophy, you want to gain muscular endurance, and it's giving you like what that's going to look like. Now, it doesn't really go into why you would want to go and or what that would entail. Like hypertrophy is building muscle, strength being just gaining strength, and then endurance. But like, I guess it assumes that you have a little bit of training background if you're going and seeking out this language model specifically. Then apply the principles of training. I think that this skips a couple steps. I would probably want to, do one of these up here because someone's not really going to be able to just be like, okay, let me incorporate specificity. Um, Overload, recovery, individualization, and variation. That's great. But that's something that you would probably want to either separate out and leave specificity up here or take this and move it down a little bit. But that's just me. Everything that they say in here, while very um, like base level, is something that I agree with. It's not something that I find like egregious and wrong. Balancing movement patterns, same thing. Push, pull, horizontal, and vertical. I like the fact that they included horizontal and vertical, while if I'm not or if I'm mistaken, yeah, they put push and pull horizontal. But they did separate squat and hinge. While this one, oh, I guess they also do. So in core anti-movement, I guess that means anti-rotation, single leg, single arm work. Again, not going to get super deep into the movement tree here, but I agree. Um, not too bad. Managing training slash volume and frequency, beginners 2 to 3 sessions per week. Now, it doesn't say how many sets are in each session, but notice 2 to 3. And for a beginner, I would probably do either 2 to 3 sets per session, meaning it would be 4 to maybe 9, like on the higher end of sessions per week. Um, and right off the bat, that's kind of a stark difference between the two, where this one was saying 8 on the lower end, 12 on the higher end. And this is that's, in my opinion, just too much volume versus 2 to 3 sessions a week. And again, right now I'm working with mostly general population folks, 1 to 2 sessions is perfectly fine, and you're gonna see adaptation regardless. As long as you're doing enough intensity for your training level. If you're used to rowing 100 pounds and you're rowing 60 pounds, you won't see the adaptation you want. But if you're rowing really close to that 100 pounds, you're going to be able to see adaptation regardless of if you do it 1 time a week, 2 times a week, 3 times a week. And then especially for beginners, I think that this is a lot more accurate or reasonable to ask for someone who's a beginner and less than a year of training experience. I do like the fact that it includes support training and recovery with recovery and nutrition. It gives you like a general protein intake goal, sleep goal, and then it says hydration, which is good. Having said that, doesn't really give you like a general recommendation like it does for the other two. Nothing wrong with that. There's water, like hydration calculators that you can look up online, and you put in your body weight and it'll tell you about how much you need. Also depends on how much water weight you lose during your workout, because that'll tell you how much you need to consume to reuptake that water. But again, I like the fact that it included this because this one really didn't include anything about it. Track, test, and adjust. Also had that included over here. And then prioritize technique overload. I mean, that's great. I like that a lot because if someone's doing an RDL, a Romanian deadlift, and they're arching their back and their spine isn't neutral, they're gonna hurt themselves eventually, especially if they keep loading it up. I would much rather someone do lower load and have perfect technique than someone doing wrong because not only are you risking injury, but you may not also be properly innervating that muscle group that you're trying to hit with that movement. I also really like the fact that this Victor sports medicine expert model will include the references that it uses during anything that it gives you. Um, I really like that. And then also just as like an added bonus, um, I had it make me like a beginner level program here. It has a squat pattern, a push, a pull, and an anti-rotation. This being upper body, upper body. Then hinge pattern with a vertical push, a vertical pull, and then single leg work, core stability, and then squat slash power combo with a push, a pull, upper body for both, a hinge variation, and a core mobility. And writing all of this down here, um, the only thing that I could really say, if this is, I'm not really big into critiquing um, programming. I have the way that I like to program for my clients and the way that Exos likes to program for their clients. And maybe I'll share one of that in a future video to come. But if this is something that you want, this is an adequate amount of volume, especially for a beginner. It has all of like the basic movement patterns that you want to hit between the squat and the hinge. The problem with this one is that there's a slight anterior chain emphasis. If you look, there's one, two, and that's it. Two, uh, three lower body push movements, and only one, two lower body pull movements. Just meaning it's not the most balanced uh workout that you could possibly do. There's nothing wrong with it, but I would definitely add one more lower body pull movement, whether that be a glute bridge on day one here, just to kind of supplement it with that goblet squat, like some antagonistic training. Um, and then it also gives you like a little warm up progression, rest between sets. Nothing wrong with that. But just my 2 cents here for this model. All right. So thank you for listening. If you made it through that whole thing, I know I'm a little bit of a talker, but I appreciate it just as a medium to get my thoughts out. Um, but yeah, I really enjoyed talking about this. Um, and there's just so many practical uses for artificial intelligence, and it's really impressive how far it's come. I know it started as kind of like a tool to check like programming coding. And now you can have semi-intelligent conversations with it. Um, and it's just incredible how far it's come and what it can be used for. In terms of its uses in the strength and conditioning field, it's a great companion. It can be used intelligently, but more as a supplement, in my opinion. I think that it has the possibility to grow and it could be a lot better in terms of programming. But at the end of the day, if you're looking for a program, talk to a coach. There's so many great coaches around the world, and I'm sure that there's one in your vicinity that, if you're averted to like interaction and averted, you can always like message them, and I'm sure they'd be happy to give you a program. Or if you go into your local gym, you talk to someone, they can, take your specific case and make a great program for you. Um, and like I outlined, it's great to use as like a buddy if you need like maybe like an alternative for an exercise in a program that someone gave you. I'm sure it can highlight like, mo uses this movement pattern, this muscle group. Here's a couple movements that you can use instead. But there's no replacing a coach. And I might be biased. I'm a coach. I obviously like my job a lot. Um, but there's something to be said about the conversations that you can have, error identification. If you're doing something wrong and you might hurt yourself, having a coach there to be able to be like, hey, let's take a step back, let's regress, and make sure you get this movement down right before anything progresses. But if you have any disagreements, if you want to have a conversation about it, please let me know. I'd be happy to spark up a conversation. But thank you again. I've been Adrian. Have a good one.